Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. My name is Heinz-Jürgen Scherer from Transfer, and I'm happy to present you today the webinar, How to Reuse Existing System Models to Generate Test Cases. In this webinar, we will discuss the kind of system models we know about ERP blueprints, business process flows, and how they compare to test models. The agenda of this webinar is a 30-minute session, starting with the introduction. Then we explain about model-based testing in using models for more agile development. We showcase you how to come from a system model, from a process flow to test cases. We summarize up and we give you an outlook to the next webinars, and ending this webinar with a Q&A session. So feel free. Add your questions to the Q&A button, and we will discuss this at the end of the webinar. Very quickly and short about the company. Transfer AG is an independent software vendor. We are located in Germany with a branch office in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we do global business with partners around the world, with consulting firms and software companies in different kinds of business. We are very specialized in model transformations and test automation using a software called BPM-X. This BPM-X software is a registered trademark and product of Transfer. My name is Heinz-Jürgen Scherer. I'm the CEO of the company, and I have more than 20 years experience in software development. And I'm specialized in enterprise architecture, business process management, and quality management. With me today, and I'd like to welcome Volker Rautenberg. He's Vice President for Product Management and more than 15 years in software development, specialized in enterprise architecture, BPM, and quality management. Welcome, Volker.
Thank you.
So, starting with this first topic about using models for more agile development. So, I think everybody often knows the V model and the enhanced W model, or so-called W model, where it's described about user requirements, system requirements models, architecture models, down to unit design models, so software design models. On the same levels, we have test models and we have the artifacts, the executable work products, on the highest levels, operational system, the software solution, and the lowest level, the units, the components coming from a standard vendor like Oracle or SAP, or being developed for legacy software. On the lower level, we are more technically driven. On the higher level, we are more business driven. And the system behavior on the lower level is more state-based. What's state-based? If I push a button, the button is pushed. It's pressed down. So this is the current state. So, for example, those tests are describing how a user interacts with a form. On the higher levels, it's more process-based. It's more for the interaction of systems and humans with applications. We at Transfer focus more on the higher levels, on the business side. That means on component integration testing, on subsystem integration testing, system tests, and especially on acceptance tests on user acceptance testing level. What's a common situation in many projects? So mainly there's a high effort for testing a solution. It's really depending on the business and industry. It's from 20% up to 50% in complex application landscapes. The answer, therefore, is it's caused by Visio called it a traceability gap between solution design and delivery. That means that we have information silos, that we have a loss of information from the business side, that there is a misunderstanding between business and IT. Another question that rises is, how are our business requirements, that's mostly concern, covered as well as law and regulations, especially in financial and in insurance industry? Are they really covered by and implemented by the solution? The answer, therefore, is that we should test not only for functional defects, mainly we should test that the requirements and risks are essentially covered by the solution. And how we can save time in preparation execution, especially in regression testing, if we have changed requests and we have to do the loop again and again to avoid timely bottlenecks in the project. Here, mainly time is wasted because the projects are not really focusing on the impacts of change and are testing too much, and there is too less automation of tests. And there's mostly a question about do we test too less, especially regarding customizing of big ERP solutions, or do we test too much? So do we test again the standards of the vendor? That gives mainly not really sense. Here, the issue is that we have many times bulky word specifications that are not really transparent for requirements, and we should use, or we shall use, business process documentation with really end-to-end path models and depicted. And finally, it's all about the business and IT misunderstanding, and many times essential testing information is missed. Here, we can add metadata, testing related information directly into the system documentation in the process model and leverage that later on for the testing. How we align business with IT. Here, mainly the task for the business analysts and risk managers and requirements managers are to scope a solution, to define requirements. The application engineers deliver the solution by doing a customizing, by doing legacy development. And there is the business transition to IT. The testing engineer, she needs to close that gap between demand and delivery. And that alignment we do with an approach called model-based testing. So we leverage the existing process documentation and system models to generate test cases and do the test automation. Our approach is to add not a new modeling tool, nor any testing tool. We use the existing tooling landscape of the project. And we use the existing process documentation. That's the system model in ERP project called a blueprint or a process flow. And this model is enhanced, it's improved to be leveraged for the testing and for the automation. And therefore, we are tool agnostic and modeling language agnostic. So it's not required to have a certain modeling language like BPMN or EPC. It can be any other kind of language. The core of the application is an integration service. That integration service connects the modeling side with the testing side and links the tools together. How does it work? So let me give an example. In the morning, I wake up and the test case that is generated for that, when I'm going to the kitchen, taking a coffee, and it generates the steps through the test case. I do get another coffee, so it does a cycle, and then I jump to the car going to work. This is a test case that is enrolled, that is generated from the process, waking up and going to work. But there are many other ways going through that process. If I'm being late, I directly jump up in going into the car and driving to work. So the model-based testing approach derives the test models, the test cases, directly from the system model, without the need to have an intermediate model in between. So in real life, a process model looks more complex. For example, process requisition flow and the interactions between humans and systems. There are different languages like BPM-N, and there are tools like ARIS, Visio, and many others. Now, to showcase such a solution, we have prepared a demonstration of using different tools, using Visio, Sparx, and ARIS to describe a process architecture, a process flow, and then using existing testing tools like simply Excel or HPLM, and executing the test cases. And the BPM-X software is a service to link the tools and to generate the test cases in scripts by really processing end-to-end flows internally to derive the test cases. Volker, I'd like to hand over to you to show how that works in real life.
Okay. Thank you, Hans-Jürgen. So let me start sharing my screen. Okay. So I hope it's visible.
That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. So, yeah, hi there. This is Volker from Transware, and I'd like to present to you the live demo part of today's webinar. Actually, my short presentation has three parts. First of all, I'd like to present to you some input models for model-based testing, which are actually business process models in different formats. Second, I'd like to demonstrate our piece of software, the BPM-X integration and model transformation software. And finally, we'll have a look at the output generated for our showcases. The first kind of output will be in Microsoft Excel. And second, we'll have a look at the test cases generated for HP ALM. Okay, so let me start with a brief look at the input side of things. So this is a Microsoft Visio diagram, which has been depicted, captured in the BPMN notation. BPMN is quite popular, and this could be the result of a business process analysis. This could be the result of process capturing done in your company by, for instance, the process owners, the process stakeholders, and all those who are concerned. So finally, the system model ends up in a thing like this. What you can see here, I'm not going to delve into the details of the exact process flow. I'd just like to give you an overview of the basics. So this is a process which starts here at an start event, and it has two end events. One is here, the other is sitting here. In between, you can see a number of gateways. Here's a gateway, there's a gateway, another gateway, and finally here's a fourth gateway. So that you can imagine that you can travel through different paths from this start here to one of the endpoints here and there. So there are, like a taxi driver, many different ways and routes you can follow in order to end up with end-to-end paths in this diagram. Okay, so what's the deal and the interesting fact about such process models, which will serve as system models? It's about the metadata, which is incorporated, which is ideally incorporated in these models. So there is not only a name for this particular business activity, there's also a documentation or a description of what this activity is actually about. And if we come to talk about the creation of test cases, of adding real value to these models in terms of, generating test cases automatically, it is of course of a high importance to add this information really at this stage, to incorporate this information. And here we have specified a few fields which are really important. For instance, the example data to be used for a specific business activity, like the prepare requisition activity in this case. We have an expected result, that is the outcome that really needs to be tested, and there needs to be a statement about the expected results, and we have execution hints. So it actually states what the testing team or the tester has to do in order to run this specific business activity. We have added this information for each and every shape. For instance, here you can see that all of the metadata is provided, and this is the ideal case, to have this model prepared for model-based testing. Okay, so there is another interesting feature here in this diagram. You can see there is this shape, make payment. So if I follow it, just let me do it. Oh, come on. Let me do it by hand. So you can see there is a sub-diagram which is providing more detail to this particular make payment process. Okay, so this is one flavor of a modeling language. This Visio diagram could serve as input for model-based testing. Another also Visio-based example is in this flavor. So it's more following the flowchart approach. It's actually a cross-functional flowchart, which for those of you who work with this kind of stuff, ring a bell. And we have added the same meta information, actually, as you can see here. We have example data, expected result, execution hints. And in the same fashion, there is a drill down to a sub-activity, which is actually the make payment procedure. Okay. Yet another kind of input. We have actually depicted the same, or more or less the same process flow. This time we have a look at the Sparx System Enterprise Architect tool. And again, the process flow is depicted here in a BPM-N-based fashion. And again, we have added metadata. Example data, execution hints, expected result. So that's the really important portion of information you have to add, or if you work in a greenfield project, to add at the beginning of such effort. The benefits of this approach to capture test relevant information very early is to lower the effort in later phases of projects, and of course to be more agile. Okay, so finally, and this would be the last kind of input I would like to show to you, is more or less the same process flow present in this time in ARIS, which is more on the high-end level of modeling tools. So it's actually depicting the same kind of information. We have provided the corresponding metadata in terms of examples, expected results, execution hints for each and every shape here in ARIS. And of course, we have also introduced a sub-process, a sub-diagram, which is about the make payment. Okay, so that's the input side of things. And I'd now like to come to the real test case creation. And for this purpose, we use our BPM-X service software, which is running the and processing the input models. We take the input models as is. That is, it could be Visio, it could be Sparx Systems Enterprise Architect, and in this case, showcase, it is ARIS. It's simply ARIS. So you can see our piece of software. It's quite simple. We have provided a configuration which is taking the ARIS input. And in my first demonstration, I'd like to generate output to Microsoft Excel. So I pick up this so-called conversion chain. This is the ARIS XML source file, which has been derived directly from ARIS. This is an interesting parameter here. It's about the MBT coverage. So you can see that we support essentially a number of different parameters. We have low level of coverage, C0, up to a high level of coverage, which is here C5, which normally reflects a larger number of test cases. So I select a lower level of coverage here. And of course, I'd like to specify the Excel target path where the output will be generated. It's exactly this folder on my desktop. And so I'm ready to run this test case generation. It's simply a matter of pushing a button, and that's all about our technology. So don't care about the input, don't care about the output, because we make that match. So we do the bridging between the modeling language used on the input side, and we'll care about your exact and specified test management system, which in this case, a very simple case, is Microsoft Excel. Okay, so as a result, I've gotten this output here. So it's about the purchase requisition flow. And what you can see is that for the lowest coverage, we have a result of 2 test cases. But let's first look at the summary of the test case generation. So this is just, a link to the 2 test cases we have. The next sheet in the Excel file is an overview of the coverage. So we can see here a list of all the shapes used on the input side in the ARIS model. So we have the events, we have the business tasks, the gateways, all of this is included. And you can see that, can easily see which of these shapes have been used in the test cases. So we can already see that the first test case is just covering a few shapes, but it's fully valid, while the second test case is following a longer path. You have the totals and can easily see the coverage of the business activities which has been reached with model-based testing. This is very essential, for instance, and very beneficial when doing an impact analysis, when, for instance, your business processes have changed. Such an overview of the coverage is highly important. Okay, so there's a next tab here, a next sheet in this Excel, which is about the coverage of the connector lines, which you've seen earlier in our input models. So it's not just a coverage in terms of the shapes, but it's also the insight into the coverage of the connectors, which are connecting one shape to another shape, which is also very important, so that you can see which connector paths have been followed by model-based testing. Okay, so let me quickly jump to one of the test cases. So this is the output. You can see this test case has exactly 8 steps, starting at the start event, ending at the end event. In between, we have some business activities. What is also covered here are the connection labels, so that you can easily follow the testing path here. And we have carried over the information from the system model, that is the documentation metadata. We have the example data, the execution hints, the expected results. These 2 columns here are left empty for the testing team so that they can fill in their testing results. Okay, we have also on the fly generated a graphical representation of this particular path. And a quick glance at the second test case we have generated. You can see it's the same structure, and it's embracing many more steps. So we end up with 35 objects, shapes covered here in this one. And again, we have a graphical representation of the overall process flow covered by this test case. Okay, so that's been the output on in terms of ARIS to Microsoft Excel. I've prepared another case which I would like to showcase to you, and it's more on the high-end side of test management. This is about HP application lifecycle management, and I'd like to generate test cases exactly for HPLM. Okay, what is specific here? And let me quickly get back to ARIS. We have incorporated requirements and risks in terms of these triangles and these exclamation mark rectangles here, so that we have another kind of information. Okay, so let me get back to our software. I'm going to output to HPALM. Again, I'm specifying the source file. There is a lot of information about the credentials, and I specify the output in terms of the HPLM test folder and the requirements folder in our HPLM system. Just a push of a button. The input model is read in, the static analysis in terms of providing the correct coverage is done, and the output is pushed to HPLM via a REST API. So let's have a look. I'll do a refresh here, and let's have a look at what has been created here. You can again see, like in the Excel example, that we now have 2 test cases here. The same kind of information is provided, the step names, description, test data, test hints, expected results. So everything is already prepared in your test management system. What's interesting here is that we also have the requirements captured, and we had attached them in the ARIS model to the appropriate business activity. So test case creation for HP does not only mean test plan creation, but if you have provided your requirements, your risks, these are as well transferred to HPLM. Okay, so a brief look at the second test case, and we again see that we have a total of 34 steps here, which exactly corresponds to what we have seen earlier in Microsoft Excel. Okay, so that's the basic way. Also, a minor remark here. You can see that these test steps here have been introduced from the sub-diagram, that is the more detailed explanation of the make purchase business activity. So we definitely support a drill down of business process flows to a deeper level of diagrams. I think, Heinz-Jürgen, this is sufficient from my side. That's been my part, the live demo part, and I'd like to hand back control to you.
Thank you, Volker, for this impressive demonstration, how to link existing modeling tools to the testing landscape. And I will continue with a summary. Meanwhile, we have got also some questions we will answer at the end. So we have some key takeaways for you about the value proposition of our approach. The first point is that we leverage the system model, so that's mainly a business process flow, business process documentation, or an ERP blueprint as a single point of truth. And the benefit you receive that there's no redundant test model to be maintained in your own editor, and you have much quicker turnarounds for iterations, especially for regression testing, if you're working in agile development, having mainly quick sprints and delivering the solution. We reuse the existing tool landscape, and for the modeling part, maybe you have an own tooling for the requirements management. Might it be Excel, or might it be a tool like IBM Prerequisite Pro and the testing tools? The benefit is that there's no tool training for the teams, and the team can really concentrate to implement the methodology, for example, CMMI levels, and for the automation of test cases without the need to learn new tooling. We connect mainly the existing tools, as you have seen, by pushing a button and transfer the information from the process documentation into the testing environment. And that's the benefit of having a sustainable investment in tools, configurations, implementations, and know-how of your teams. We generate real end-to-end paths, as you've seen, Volker has shown you, higher levels and lower levels, and we call that a reverse process decomposition. And it's generating the test cases, and the quality of test cases is increased because they're really derived from the process documentation. And finally, by adding metadata to the testing, as shown by Volker, into, for example, properties of the shapes, we transfer that knowledge from the business analysts, from the business to IT. And we take care for traceability of requirements to generate the coverage within the testing system. To get your own personal trial edition, you can download it. You can give us a request and you can download it. We have it already out of the shelf for different tools for your own test. The next month's webinars will cover following subjects: about requirements modeling and coverage testing, cloud-based testing as we have cloud-based solutions, compare productivity of easy to more complex tools. So is it worth the money and training, or going better with easy tools like Microsoft Visio? Compare tools like Microsoft TFS and HPLM for model-based testing, generating test data so we can derive the real test data, doing white box testing with path and preconditions, and how to enhance business process documentation for testing. Now coming to the Q&A session, and there are some questions arrived.
Yeah, Hans-Jürgen, I had a look at these questions already, so if you agree, I try to recapture them, and please give a brief answer because we are slightly over time. So one question is about, is there a cloud-based solution for BPM-X?
That's right, Volker. So we have different solutions. So solutions might be on-premise, installed on a consultant notebook, or they are cloud-based or private cloud. So they can installed and they are, let's say, purely web-based to leverage your process documentation for testing. Another question has coming up. So there are many standards in the tool market, and is it possible to have other standards than BPMN for our modeling?
Yeah, so it's correct that I have shown a lot of BPMN notation in the live demo part, but the answer is no, we are not depending on BPMN. We actually support each and every modeling language, which could be event-driven process chains. I've demoed flowcharts, so this really doesn't matter to us. So it could be every standard.
So how about UML? So it's mainly used in software development?
It's no problem. We can simply consume it because we have the flexible metadata model incorporated in BPM-X.
Okay. So there's another question.
Another question is about ARIS. Do I need a specific modeling tool like ARIS?
Yeah, certainly not. So we leverage existing tools. It might be in Microsoft Visio or a Sparx or an ARIS, or there might be in IBM BlueWorks or many other tools. For sure, there must be a configuration. That means a mapping that you have shown us that is loaded and connects the tools together. So certainly there's no own editor required for doing that.
Hans-Jürgen, let me put a final question because we are a little bit over time. I think this is an interesting one. It's about the generation of test data.
Right.
Is it possible?
So yes, I think we have seen it in your diagrams. So you have shown us gateways, and there are questions. If the conditions are depicted in the models, we can derive the test data. That means the model-based testing approach is a white box testing. So we have some knowledge about the model, about system behavior. And if consultants are describing that behavior by putting in, let's say, for example, questions like, if the purchase order higher than 5,000, it must be a confirmation by a supervisor, we can derive the test data. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us in this morning or afternoon. And we hope to see you again at the Transfer webinar series. And have a good day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.